I'd like to call this meeting to order at 6:34 p.m. Clerk, please take the roll.
Councilmember Pasqua.
Here.
Councilmember Ludwig.
Here.
Councilmember Shockley. Here. Vice President LeBlanc.
Here.
President Lima.
Here. Please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. In the event of an emergency, members of the public here in council chambers can exit out either back door to the right or left and exit the building fully into the back parking lot or the front lawn. First, we'll go to public hearings and public comment on docketed items only. Are there any members of the public here with public comment on docketed items? Any members of the public on Zoom? Public comment on docketed items? Going once, going twice, 3 times. Public comment on docketed items is closed. Can I have a motion to take the agenda out of order?
I'll make the motion.
Motion from Vice President LeBlanc, second from Councilman Pasqua. Any discussion? Clerk, please take the roll.
Councilmember Pasqua.
Yes.
Councilmember Ludwig.
Yes.
Councilmember Shockley.
Yes.
Vice President LeBlanc.
Yes.
President Lima.
Yes.
5 in the affirmative, 0 in the negative. Motion passes.
Moving on to report of other town officers and officials. Item A, Stephen Angell, Solicitor. Discussion on resolution requesting the RI Secretary of State placing local ballot questions pertaining to charter changes to the electors for the general election to be held on November 8th, 2022. Solicitor Angell.
Good evening, Madam President, members of the council. A couple of items to update you on. First, we'll start with the home rule charter amendments that were passed in the November 2022 election. So I drafted the bill for the legislature, had provided them, let's see, with the election results and the ballot questions, the local question certification, the council agenda from July 25th of 22, and the section of the Rhode Island laws relative to the school committee composition and its 4-year terms. I pointed out I had spoken directly to Chief Legislative Counsel, so they knew it was coming. I spoke with Representative Tom Naray and Senator Lou Raptakis, who are going to lead our effort in bringing other members of the Coventry delegation as sponsors. The bill has been drafted. It will be reported out most likely from Leg Council on Thursday. It will be for immediate consideration in both chambers before the end of the term. With that said, and I also spoke with John Anderson, legal counsel for the school department, so he is aware of what's transpiring as well. I did point out that under Rhode Island General Law Section 16.2-5, that the statute calls for 4-year terms for school committee members unless exempted. So I made sure Leg Council knew that they were not only ratifying the charter amendments, but also special attention to that section of the Rhode Island, that title of the Rhode Island General Laws. How they choose to do it and report it out to the floor is their business, but we made them abundantly clear. So that's moving along fine. I don't expect any other issues. One other item of update, but not for discussion, but the council, we had discussed this on a number of occasions. Probably about 3 weeks or so ago, on June 6th, for those who are interested, yours truly will be prosecuting. Also on the same night, an item of great interest to the council, and it's at 5:45, is the Coventry Mart and Coventry Smoke Shop on Main Street. That item will be heard that night as to the lighting issue and the owner's non-compliance. So I know that many, if not all of you, had constituents who wanted to come and be present in the municipal court that night. That's the date, June 6th at 5:45. Please have them arrive a bit earlier so that I can chat with them, and we'll make sure that their testimony is heard that night. Thank you. Yes. Yes, they will. I've asked the court to make accommodation in the calendar because I have a certain presentation of evidence, which will include the witnesses and others. So, you know, I want to make sure there's ample time for the residents to be heard. I don't care if 100 people show up. If they want to make their concerns known to the court, then they should feel free to do so that night. You're welcome. Any other questions? Thanks very much.
We'll move on now to report of the town manager, Daniel Parrillo, town manager, who will give just a brief recap of the FY24 budget before we take public comment.
Thank you, Council. Just going to go over some of the highlights that we've all are pretty familiar with. So for the 23-24 budget, the town is proposing right now a 3.23% increase. That comes out to be an overall increase of 2.17 to the budget, from $114,076,119 to $116,549,019. That increase is up 0.92% for the town side, and on the school side, 2.76%. This budget also includes a $500,000 increase to the schools. The total local appropriation for the schools will be $50,523,936. These funds will supplement state aid, other school revenues, and the SRP pension contribution for a total school operating budget of $79,221,244. Some of the highlights in the budget: we are eliminating a deputy finance director and deputy treasurer. We are adding an engineering coordinator July 1st to assist with the sewer program. We are adding a purchasing clerk in January to help with the RFPs and bidding in the finance department. The assistant town manager is taking on the duties of economic development coordinator at no additional cost to the town. We are increasing refuse and disposal fees, $116,000 to meet the Rhode Island Resource Recovery new contract that we just signed. We're continuing to fund the tax valuation line to prepare for the full revaluation in 3 years. This budget includes a CIP program budgeted at $410,000, $410,747 to be exact. We're also providing one-time ARPA items on the town side of $821,547. On the school side, $320,000 is going to be appropriated from ARPA. And lastly, we're also appropriating $500,000 in contingency for the contracts for police and Council 94. So that kind of sums up the budget. If I may, the budget calendar that we've been kind of going by needs to be amended going forward. So with the hearings tonight and Saturday, the 23rd's meeting, we're not going to be able to have a vote on the budget. The 23rd is going to be the final opportunity to set the levy. Once the levy is set the 23rd, that information is going to be coordinated with the tax assessor to set our tax rates. Once we have that, that has to go to municipal finance to be approved. That takes 2 to 3 days. Once it's approved, it comes back to us for publication, has to be in the paper for 10 days before you can have a final vote. So that moves your final vote to June 13th. Is going to be your final vote. Supermajority vote, we're good to go. If not, I'm figuring the following week, the June 20th, to adopt the alternative budget. If that fails, then we'd go to the 26th and 28th for the townwide vote. Worst case scenario, which hopefully we don't get to that point. So I just want to give you an update on the budget calendar per se. And lastly, I have Raina here from Parks and Recreation. Her budget's been quite the challenge for us. Between what's been done in the past, what Mr. Savetti has asked her to do going forward, there's been a lot of challenges getting to the point where her programs are funded and everything she does currently is funded. So within this current budget, Director Savetti and I eliminated the teen center after-school program at the annex. It's about $22,000. That takes in no revenue. That's what it costs the town. So we decided to take that out. She's asking for that to be put back in. Along with that, there are other programs and temporary help where she was asking for about $200,000 more than what we gave her. So we cut her to the point where we thought it was doable. She'd like to make a presentation to the council saying that she doesn't think it's going to be doable, and it's going to result in some program cuts. So if you don't mind, I'd like her to come up and kind of explain where she's at and explain to you what the money's needed for.
Councilmember Shockley.
Before she does that, I just want to make clear, I'm not going to be here on June 13th. I am out of town for work, and I would very much like to be part of the meeting where we vote on the budget under this new guidance. I'm going to be away from the 12th through the 15th.
Okay, we'll work internally for a date.
Mhm.
Thank you for letting me know.
Any questions?
If we may, before Director Blumenthal comes up, I just want to give, because the school department's here also, Mr. Cower, I don't know if he wants to come and give a quick recap or highlights like you did of the school budget for members of the public that are watching or in the chambers here today.
Good evening. I did not prepare a presentation, but I can give an overall recap of where we are today. So we were asked to revise our budget. We have reduced our budget ask from 3.39% to 1%, with the $500,000 allocation from the town, as the town manager pointed out. We also eliminated some positions. We have a number of retirements, so we were able to kind of close some classes through attrition. So we laid off some people, but we also have some retirements, and we're also hoping that the retirements that those positions that we did keep, that we could hire people at a lower step. So we'd have some cost savings there as well. We also worked with our bus company. We're looking for some savings with transportation in town. And then we're also using our vehicles. We've purchased some vans. We're going to continue to purchase some vans with some of the money that the town has allocated to us so that we can offset some of the high costs associated with statewide transportation. So that's a strategy that we're using. We are also built some assumptions into our budget that, I think will help us, especially addressing the maintenance requirement. We are looking for the impact fees when we get to that point. There was some discussion about impact fees in one of the previous meetings. There was a number thrown out as being sort of where they thought we landed in terms of the school allocation. So that's important to us because we can use that to address our maintenance requirement. We also have housing aid coming to us in some instances based on maintenance projects that we do. So if there are maintenance projects that we do using our school department budget, any maintenance housing aid that comes from that maintenance requirement, we were looking for that to come back to offset our maintenance. Let me see. We did retool this budget so that it includes the first year of the new teacher contract. If it were to go through, we retool the budget so that originally we had budgeted a 2.5% increase. Once negotiations were over, we readjusted our budget to absorb that 2.75 in the first year. Like I said before, we did have 8 layoffs, and we're also using the ARPA money that you gave us to purchase curriculum materials. So that's where we are today. I'll take any questions if there's any, please.
Vice President LeBlanc.
As it relates to maintenance, meeting the maintenance requirement, what is your estimate that for the FY24 budget that's going to be?
Yeah, let me see if I have that here. I want
Because
to say
essentially, I believe that means that we're allocating 500,000 to you through the budget,
Mhm.
but then you're going to get an additional, approximately 400,000-ish that typically would have came to the town. Is that an accurate statement?
Right. So the way the conversation went was, if you recall last year, the town funded the town allocated money for the maintenance requirement in a dedicated account that wasn't part of maintenance of effort. And we also got $900,000. We've talked about that at a previous meeting from the state when they increased our state aid. So we use both pockets of money for maintenance. The $900,000 came from our state aid and we used that to update security cameras indoors. The example I gave was because that was state aid money and money that was part of our budget, that if there was any housing aid associated with that, that housing aid would go back and sort of feed the maintenance requirement so that we can meet that requirement, seeing that there's no dedicated fund from the town for this year. If there's funding that's used that came from that dedicated account, for example, we have the sewer project that we're trying to get our head around at the high school. If there was housing aid that came back from that, then that obviously would go back to the town because that came from the town's dedicated account for maintenance. So that was the conversation, that if we're going to take on that responsibility and try to find a way to build into our budget, that if there's any housing aid associated with those budgetary expenses, that it goes back into the school account so that we can continue to plan forward.
Okay, so I just want to make sure this is abundantly clear to everybody. So going forward, any housing aid that a school gets for any actions that they take for maintenance, the school believes that 100% of those funds are always going to go to the school, and it's never going to be a discussion point on an annual basis.
So that was
if
the
it goes to the
assumption.
town or the school.
Correct. So when
Okay.
we built this, that was the assumption we built into this this budget. When we brought our number down, I don't have it. I mean, I do have it in front of me. I just have to locate it on my sheet. I want to say it's like $3 million. Harold, do you have that number off the top of your head? Oh, I got it. $2,356,000 in the maintenance requirement. We offset that with salaries from our employees. So that's about $1 million worth of salaries in our maintenance department. So then the rest of it is what we would use our funding to pay for.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Councilmember Shockley.
My question was actually on the same vein. That's the understanding based on a conversation you had with the town leadership.
Correct.
I'm just making sure everyone's on the same page when it comes.
Any further questions from members of the council? Thank you.
Thank you.
Director Blumenthal, if you'd like to come up.
So I appreciate the opportunity to go over the budget again. So this is the first time in years we've actually had expenses back in our budget. So I'm very happy about it. It makes it much easier to track and plan. I wanted to bring to your attention what the town manager said about temporary employees. So our original ask was for 256 and we received the 220. So if you look on the sheet, the department kind of projected all of our programs for the new fiscal year. So with that, over a little over 200,000 is just for summer instructional basketball, camp, and the league. So we don't have much left over to actually run programs throughout the year, including events. So even if we got rid of the teen center, we would still need $17,244 to meet our projected revenue that's in the budget. And then you'll see seasonal temp employees under the parks area. We're short 10,000 and that would help with seasonal custodial maintenance positions. Right now, we only have 5,000 approximately for custodial help. So it'd be helpful to have the full amount, which is approximately $15,000. That helps with summer camp cleanup, that helps with the pavilions, the bathrooms. And because we're short with maintenance staff, it also helps during our busier time during the summer and the fall, leave pickup and everything else. Sorry.
So just to recap, so for programming, you said staffing wise, you're short how much? 17?
So total for recreation programs would be the 36,846. Now, if we were to remove the teen center just the staff, that would be approximately 19,600 to cut. We would still need $17,244 to run our programs throughout the year.
And is the teen center the only thing cut from that that doesn't bring revenue? It's just service.
Originally, the beach was removed because it didn't fully pay for itself. But that would be it. There's other areas where you see it's highlighting green called instructional services, and I'll get to that. That was also cut, which I'll go over in a second, but we need to put it back in the budget if we want to run all of our fitness programs or trips to PPAC or sports venues.
And then if you could just provide some information on the teen center, I
Yeah.
mean, if you have stats on how many teens participate, what they actually do, when is it
Absolutely.
offered? I just don't know anything about it.
So pre-COVID, it was a Monday through Friday program, but we noticed during the first few days of the week and to save money, like it wasn't being utilized as much. It was more Wednesday through Friday that the teens are actually using it. It used to be at that old teen center down the road in Washington. But we moved the location to the annex and we actually worked with the schools. They're very generous and they allowed us to use one of the buses from the middle school to take the children from the middle school and bring them to the teen center. So we went from approximately, a little less than a dozen a day to 33 people a day, Wednesday through Friday. It goes 2:30 to 6:30. A lot of them are middle school children. Some of them are at like stay-at-home children. So it's their opportunity to socialize and to be physically active. We have a truancy officer that works there and a lot of our counselors work there. So it really helps them open up. We help them with their homework. We bring them to the library. So it's a nice program to help you socialize.
So it's like the equivalent of a YMCA after school at an elementary school kind of thing.
Correct.
Okay. But for the YMCA program, those parents would normally pay for them to be in that, right?
Most municipalities have a teen center or library have a teen center program. It's really to like curb like antisocial behavior, get children off the streets. It's really just a social service more than like an activity.
Mhm.
If I can always find different means to have programs for teenagers if we want to lessen that budget and then put a different amount in. But it is utilized very well especially because of the busing from middle school.
So the town's then paying for the bus,
No, it's
but who's driving it?
it's part of their route. So they actually drop off the youth there. You have to get special.
Okay. I don't know if there's any questions from the council, but so then the next thing you mentioned was
Seasonal temp for maintenance.
seasonal temp, and you said you were short by how much?
The 10,269.
You were short 10,000? Okay.
So we asked for 40 and we received 30. So 10,269. And then the payroll taxes will change depending on what you want to put back or not want to put back. The recreation supplies, we have 3,000. We asked for 13. We even lowered our camp. So those are all the supplies that we put into the cost of our programs that we plan to recoup. So that is all of our crafts, everything we have for events, everything we have for any of the camps or basketballs leagues. So those supplies are put into the cost of the programs, which the town will get back. But we need that to run our programs. Assuming we have all the programs running. And then for special events, since we took out the fireworks and police detail for the next upcoming fireworks, the one after this, we actually only need 88,297. But this, because there's no special line item in our budget, that money covers all the field trips, all the sporting events we go to, all the PPAC shows, not just the staff. The staff is up in temporary employees. So we actually need that to run our field trips and everything else. And again, all that money is collected and given back to the town, the general fund. So we need approximately, so 26,124 plus the 30,000 ARPA that was mentioned prior.
I'm
So-
sorry, what was
so-
that for
So
specifically?
it's, we need 88,297 and it looks like we were given 62. 173. So we need essentially $26,124.
But for what specifically?
For the special events. So that has to do with summer camp entertainment, the summer vacation camp field trips, all the theater trips, all the sports trips. And again, we don't run these programs unless we can get back the funding. Let's see what else. And the instructional services, if you look on that sheet, it's that green section. So you can see also all of our fitness programs, all of our STEAM programs, pickleball. So again, we get back, we make 30% on those guaranteed. We don't run it unless we can make 30% on that. So we are shy, let's see, $16,394. We do have, I want to be very honest with you, we do have a little bit in the equipment rental. You were very generous and gave us 19,600. However, we don't need the stage anymore if we're not having the fireworks this like the 23, 24. So we can put that towards something else you choose. So we need about like 6,000 of that, but the rest can go towards something else.
I'm a little confused about your total ask. I'm going to be honest.
Okay, so it just depends on what you want to do. I'm sorry. So for temporary employees, we would need the 36,846, unless you cut the teen center, then we need 17,244. And if you would like to add teen programs after, I would probably need another 6,500 on top of that 17,000. Yeah. Seasonal temp employees, I would like an additional 10,000 just because we're so understaffed for maintenance and custodial. Payroll taxes depends on what is being offered, the FICA. Recreation supplies, we would need another 10,781 to run our programs. Special events, we would need 26,124. Instructional services, we would need 16,394.
Grand total?
What do you want to do?
No,
Uh,
I think we need to know what the full picture
um,
is.
That, I apologize.
Vice President LeBlanc.
I have a couple questions.
Sure.
Has the finance director been presented this information?
We had a meeting with the town manager and the finance director once you presented on the 20th after the fact.
After the fact. Okay, so you guys have at least discussed this, but I'm just receiving this now. So just for like accuracy purposes, making sure that it's complete. I just didn't know if anybody else had looked at this. That's all. And then secondly, we're not voting this tonight, are we?
I personally wouldn't prefer to, just because we're just seeing this tonight, and
Yeah.
I don't think it's appropriate to just cut programs or consider something like that on the fly.
Nor do I. And this is, the potential ask is over $80,000.
Yep.
My preference is this is a new way of looking at it versus the old way
Mhm.
that we've seen multiple versions. I would appreciate if we could get this information in the other method of looking at this, the way that we've been presented the budget, just because that way it has the current year budget ask that you're currently asking for us. It has last year and it has the 2 previous years. And I'd like to see that trend before I would be
Mhm.
ready to vote on it. That's just my 2 cents.
And again, the expenses weren't put in the past. I think the last time they were put in was at least 4 years ago.
That's fair.
Do we have the full total? Kim, did you do it?
I
There's-
just did it back again, without the teen center.
Council Ludwig.
So I did want to thank you for for putting the projections together, because I don't think I've seen this before, and I get a lot of questions from residents in terms of why do we have the summer camp? Why is it so cheap? Why this, why that? Why do we have these programs at all? And it's like, okay, well, obviously they're a service we're providing to the community, but you're actually getting it all back,
Correct.
right? And we're actually netting a small amount of revenue that we can put towards other programs, special events, things like that. So this,
And this is the minimum.
yeah, this view, I've never seen this broken out like this. So while I agree, it would be helpful for me like to have the what was asked for, what was the year prior. I do agree with that. I've never seen it broken down like this. And would it be possible to get maybe a soft copy so that I can, or I take a picture or something? I've already wrote all over mine, I'm sorry, but so that I can show this to residents, because they're literally asking me, well, why do we offer a program if we're losing all this money? And it's like, well, hold on a minute, we're not.
And this is a work in progress because like everything else, you can't know exactly how much a
Of course.
ticket to a Celtics game is going to
Of
cost.
course.
And we've already surpassed, like, for the event projections, we've already raised more for like the summer entertainment.
Of
This
course.
was not my idea. This is actually finance director, town manager, who wanted this together, which I really appreciate. It was very
Yeah,
helpful.
so this is a very helpful breakdown to just show that some of the people who are asking me in terms of, why we spend certain funds on different programming, that we actually, like your comment about, we need to have at least a 30% net to hold some of these instructor and fitness programs. So that I have not heard that before. So thank you.
Vice President LeBlanc.
One additional follow-up. The DPW had recently increased their rates because they hadn't been increased for, I think, some were decades, I'm pretty sure. When was the last time that you had increased any of your fees?
So I'm actually working with the finance director and the town manager. So I came up with a presentation. I'm working with them to finalize it. So I actually have a schedule of how I'm increasing the fees for different programs, which I have here, but I don't know.
Got
if
it.
I hand it out.
Just wanted to make
Yeah.
sure it was in the works.
Yeah, and then
Awesome.
I also increased, I looked into this, I also increasing our facility rental fees and our field rental fees. I didn't feel comfortable doing it this season because I think it's unfair for them to put in a permit and then change it on them. I want to get their buy-in first.
It's fair. Thank you.
Any other questions from members of the council? Thank you very much.
Thank
We
you.
appreciate it. And thank you to the administration for supporting this format. Before we go to public comment, any questions, comments, or members of the council? Councilmember Shockley?
So I don't know if this is the appropriate time for the comment, but I had spoken to the finance director and given the information to the town solicitor and town manager on the general law that I believed covered our current tax levy and the commercial versus the residential taxes. I wasn't sure if anyone had gotten a chance to review that and if we might be able to speak to that tonight.
We have looked at that, and I think what our long-term goal is to separate the three tax rates into three separate items. Unfortunately, we need legislation to do that at the state level, so that's not going to get done for this week or next week. Budget season.
So if you don't mind, I currently with the new reval, the way it's breaking down is that residences are paying in many cases higher taxes, but our commercial rates, our commercial actual taxes are going down. So we're charging businesses less than they were paying last year while we're charging residents more. And in some cases, a lot more. So I looked up general law 44 for Jamie's purposes, 44-5-11.8. And it states in there that there are certain formulas that have to be abided by in order to change the rates. You can't just change the residential rate by one amount and the commercial by another. They have to kind of be in lockstep with each other. So there are 3 towns, Gloucester, East Greenwich, and Providence, that don't have to fall under those rules. So I would like Coventry to be excluded from those rules so that we can still give our commercial businesses a decrease in the levy perhaps, but not have it fall so firmly on the shoulders of our residences. So it was something that I was hoping we might even be able to try to quickly get through in front of the legislature this year. Because this is the year that we're seeing it. This is the year where we could change rates. By next year, our commercial properties will be mad. This year, we might be able to decrease them and make everyone happy, which is something that doesn't happen all the time and something that I would love to be part of. So I don't know how quickly something can get in front of the legislature. And I also wasn't sure if we'd change the tangible rate at all and if that was going to add a positive impact or if it just wasn't a large enough number.
The tangible piece I can't speak on, very small. Yeah. But I mean, basically, I think this budget is going to be done Saturday after the public hearing, or the worst case scenario, the 23rd, which is a week from tonight. I don't think we're going to get legislation done
So-
by then.
Do they need to approve our tax levy during the legislation, or do they just have to say Coventry can be excluded from having to stay within this formula? Because if that's the case, do we have time to at least put the ask in?
We could put the ask in. It would require a resolution of the council. We can put that on for the next agenda if that's what the council wants to do.
I would be in support of that. It wouldn't mean we had to necessarily do anything, but I think being able to put in front of the legislature the fact that we want to change our taxes for our residents in a fair way. Getting commercial and more industry into the area is something people are looking for, but it does seem like this year it's actually detrimental.
I
mean-
mean, if this is an abnormal event or not, or whether this happens regularly, I don't have that history, but I think having those three broken down independently is better for the town.
I would support a proposal by the council to be able to put that before the legislature this year.
I'd support that.
But I think the question is, would it get passed by the legislature in time to be able to impact this year's budget?
I don't think we can answer that question.
Do you know how many bills are on the docket for them?
Madam President, I can certainly inquire of legislative council.
Mhm.
And
Okay.
and get an answer for the next council meeting.
Yeah, I just want to set expectations that where the approval of this potentially in the General Assembly would fall in our own budget process and make sure it's.
I spoke to Rep. Ray about this already. He mentioned that he'd be willing to put something forward, but it was just the timing of it. Like I said, we're pretty much moving forward with our budget after next Tuesday's meeting.
Because we have to advertise and
10
everything else.
days. Municipal Finance has to approve it, then 10 days of advertising. Then you have the first vote. Hopefully passes the first vote. If not, we're talking end of June.
But
Because
I think we've already stated that we're not looking to get our levy approved by the legislature. We're looking to get our exclusion from this law. So I don't think that we have to worry about the days and weeks of advertising. I think we can do two things simultaneously, if I'm understanding Mr. Angell correctly.
But we have to present to Municipal Finance what our commercial rate's going to be next week.
And this
So we're not gonna-
exemption would impact that, is what he's saying.
That's the timing.
That's what I'm trying,
difficulty.
yeah, that's what I'm trying to get at.
Yeah.
So we could go for it this year, but it wouldn't go into effect until next year's budget. We could get it approved in the GA and be set, but
Yeah, I still think it would be worth putting it forward so that next year we could have it have a positive impact, whereas
Mm.
this year, regardless of what we approve for a budget, a lot of residents are going to see an increase to their taxes.
I would agree. I've gotten a considerable amount of outreach about that piece, so I would agree with Councilmember Shockley. All right, thank you. Any other comments, discussion? Hearing none, can I hear a motion to add another public comment on docketed items?
I'll make the motion.
Motion from Vice President LeBlanc, second from Councilman Pasqua. Any discussion? Clerk, please take the roll.
Councilmember Pasqua,
Yes.
Councilmember Ludwig,
Yes.
Councilmember Shockley,
Yes.
Vice President LeBlanc,
Yes.
President Lima.
Yes.
5 in the affirmative, 0 in the negative, motion passes.
We are now having a second public comment on docketed items. This is the public's opportunity if they'd like to come and ask questions or make a public comment on the FY24 budget, school or municipal. Anyone in council chambers like to make a public comment on the budget? Yep, just come forward and state your name and address for the record.
Lisa Knockowitz, 21 Beach Street.
You just make sure the microphone's on. Thank you.
My name is Lisa Knockowitz, 21 Beach Street. Also treasurer of the Tioga Lake Association. And I'll just share with you, once again, the town's not going to fund Briar Point Beach, the town-owned asset, the town-owned lake, and they're not going to fund it. Throughout the whole budget process, I thought we were all set for this year. And then all of a sudden, bottom dropped out as it has for the last 4 or 5 years. It's a shame. And it turns into a real problem in the neighborhood where it's located because it's left wide open with absolutely no supervision at all. I would encourage you. I'd love to see, the organization would love to see Briar Point get some sort of funding. I understand that it's too late for lifeguards. However, we're going to go through another summer of a public beach that nobody from Coventry uses, that costs taxpayers a whole bunch of money because it gets trashed. And the neighborhood's going to have to put up with a town beach that's totally unsupervised. So I would encourage you, if there's any way to be able to find any sort of funding, that would be great. Thank you.
Thank you very much for your comment. Any other members of the public here in council chambers? Welcome. Just state your name and address for the record, please.
Richard Cavallaro, 120 Tillinghast Road. I've had the pleasure of speaking to Mr. LeBlanc on a couple occasions. I've spoken with Mr. Pascua on social media. I don't normally speak, but I feel for what you guys have to do every year. It's a no-win situation. I have 2 things I want to know. How do you plan going forward when you're not going to have surplus monies to put in the budget? And what is my return on Mr. Pascua had, I hope I'm pronouncing that right, had given an estimate on what the new tax rate might be if the revised budget was passed. With my revaluation, I'm looking at almost $1,000 more a year, not including my fire tax. I voted no on budgets in the past because there wasn't enough money. I'm glad to see this capital improvement money. Where do we go from here? What's my return? I don't have kids in the school anymore. I haven't seen a police car near my house in months. So my road gets plowed and they pick up my trash. So where do I find $1,000 in my budget? And where do we go next year? Is there a plan in place to fund whatever we're not funding this year? With the money we're paying, I can't believe that we're arguing about funding a teen center. I can't believe we're arguing about funding a recreation park. What is our return on the money that we're giving them? I'm inclined to vote yes on, I know our vote doesn't really count much anymore, but this budget, I agree, you can't cut anymore. But what's the return to the taxpayer? Anyone?
I feel for you as someone whose valuation assessment went up by $110,000 and my
I'm up
taxes.
about 120.
Yep. So I'm looking at about a $900 increase in my taxes this year. So
It's
I'm
understandable.
right there with you.
But tell me as a taxpayer, I've been here 30 years. What is my return? I mean, I'm giving you money every year.
Mhm.
What is my return on?
I heard someone's mic. Councilmember Shockley.
So I would say we have tried this year not to put things into ARPA funds that are going to come up again next year as unique items. Not that other items won't exist. Unfortunately, with the reval, unlike the tax levy that we're going to be voting on, where everyone will see an increase of the same price per thousand, the reval actually makes it so some people see increases like you are, some people barely see a difference, and other people are actually seeing a decrease in their taxes. That's why tonight we discussed how we might be able to better the residents next year with changing the way the law currently works, which is detrimental to how we can do our tax rates this year.
I agree, but you're still basing your entire spending on taxing either businesses or residents. Is there a plan in place to get big business into the town? Is there a plan, is there anything? Is there a 5-year plan on spending? I've spoken to Mr. LeBlanc about this. The town I used to work for, they knew 5 years out, we need a fire truck, we need a school bus. They knew what was coming down the pipe. Is there any plan?
You're right. There's been no history of strategic planning in this town. And when you, in my opinion, when you have a system where you vote on your budget every year and you have no idea what you're going to get from the voters, there's no way to strategically plan what your investments are going to be. I will say that as you've acutely noted, that this council in particular we're now in the second year in a row of actually funding capital improvement, which hasn't been funded in God knows how long, maybe 10 years or more. You have a Parks and Rec department that's actually funded, maybe not to the full level they like, but it was completely decimated about 5 years ago, and even more so during COVID. And you also have an administration right now who's pulling together a 10-year road paving program by using a combination of ARPA funds and also strategically going out to bond, because the last time we did a paving project in Coventry was what, 7-8 years ago when we touched a road. For the first time.
Just paved Waterman Hill Road, and boy, if you want to make some money, put a police car on that.
For the first time, we're actually doing strategic planning. The town did a strategic
I
plan, started
appreciate
last
that.
year. We finally have a comprehensive plan for the first time in 20 years, which dictates, like you mentioned, the zoning and the ability to bring in businesses. We have a sewer facilities plan that's being done, which is grossly out of date. I'd say almost 2 decades out of date. That's being completed. And part of the issue with bringing business into town is when you don't have sewers all the way through your business and industrial areas, nobody wants to start a restaurant or start a business and have to maintain a septic system. So that's part of that plan. And there's a 20-year plan to start for sewer infrastructure. So this is a council that for the first time is actually planning and has used federal relief money strategically for those one-time expenses. Same thing, you mentioned your fire taxes, that the town put forward $65,000 approximately to survey our fire district situation and assess what a recommendation would be moving forward to get that in a more consistent basis and under control. So like I said, I totally feel for you. I'm right there with you. $109,000 in my assessment. And unfortunately, I think part of the piece here is while, my expenses at home have gone up, the analogy I like to use is the gallon of milk. The price of a gallon of milk goes up, but you don't get more than a gallon of milk. And I just think things are catching up with the town of Coventry.
I hope so, because I really don't want to leave. I like my house, I like my neighbors, I like the town.
And we don't want you to leave.
So
We want
I
you to be
would-
part of the
The
community.
only thing I could say is I would really like to see more projections. And it looks like you're doing it, so,
I don't disagree with you. Thank you.
all right, thanks.
I appreciate it. Councilman Pasqua.
I was actually going to add to that. Richard, one of the things that you had asked was basically, what's that $1,000 getting you? And in this budget, there's money in there for economic development and bringing in more business and strengthening that side of the town. Because if we don't focus on that, the scales are never going to tip the other way. And that's one of our largest problems. We just really haven't invested in that in a big way. So this budget actually does some of that. So that's part of what you're getting in this budget. And it's some security for the future.
Thank you for your comments. It's appreciated. Any other members in council chambers for public comment on docketed items? Any members of the public on Zoom, public comment on docketed items? Going once, going twice, 3 times. Public comment is now closed. I'll now move on to public comment for undocketed items. Anyone in council chambers? Public comment for undocketed items. Any members of the public on Zoom? Going once, twice, 3 times. Public comment for undocketed items is closed. At this time, I'll hear a motion to adjourn at 7:24 PM.
I'll make the motion.
Motion from Vice President LeBlanc, second from Councilman Pasqua. All those in favor? Any opposed? The ayes have it. We stand adjourned. Our next public hearing will be on Saturday, May 20th at 10